I'm Nadia Gurwell.
I'm John Goliatino.
I'm Michelle Blanchard. Welcome to 30 Minutes. Welcome to 30 Minutes. I am your host, Michelle Blanchard. My guest today is Lisa Shea, licensed clinical social worker and KRI Kundalini Yoga teacher trained in energy healing. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for
I am
having
very
me.
excited about the show today because you and I recently met a couple months ago, and you were telling me about your practice and how you incorporate yoga in your practice. So let's talk a little bit about you before we get started. So
Great.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into social work.
How I got into social work and
Yes.
about myself. Okay. That's a lot.
Yes.
Let's see, I got into social work because I was led to social work. I was divorced in 2003 and literally prayed for direction
Okay.
and my purpose and a second opportunity at a career. And decided to go back to school when my kids were old enough and went back not knowing what I would eventually fall into, but I just wanted to expose myself because I had been in the food business before
Okay.
and did not want to go back to that because it's not very family oriented. So
Very,
got
very
in
family friendly, rather.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's not very forgiving, especially being a single mom. So when I was in school, I started meeting, of course, taking classes and loving it because the food industry, I didn't have a lot of like psychology, sociology, so I started to take those courses. Fell madly in love with my undergrad at WestConn. And then I met somebody, she said, I was talking about becoming either a doctor or a midwife. I was so excited to kind of explore all my options, and this woman that I mentioned said, have you ever considered social work? You're a social worker. And I said, what is that? I don't know what that is.
Right.
And next thing you know, I met at least 2 to 3 social workers who kind of just, I don't think that that's by accident. I think sometimes we're kind
I
of
was going to say, isn't that funny how people come into your lives at the right time to kind of guide you and direct you?
Exactly, and I took my first, from that I took my first social work course, and I knew it just landed right in my body, right in my heart, and it was a lot about social justice and equality and humanity and offering people dignity, and I just fell in love. So that's really how social work found me. I really didn't find it. I think it's a calling, and I said yes.
Right, right.
So
tell me a little bit about your training for your work.
my training for social work, I love my training. When I was in undergrad, I worked, I'll give you a brief synopsis because there's a lot. I worked at United Way, which I didn't think I'd like. I absolutely loved my work there because that's at a macrocosm level. And I was I think I was a junior, and then I worked at the Brookfield Senior Center, which I loved.
Yes.
Absolutely loved working with seniors. Oh, what an opportunity to get to know some phenomenal people. Then I was at Catholic Charities
Okay.
and had my first clients, which was incredible, and it was just an amazing experience. And then I was in grad school, graduated, went to grad school, which was amazing, and then I worked for a year at Four Winds, which was very, very molding, I'd say. It really helped mold me as a social worker, the clay of who I am becoming, and very, very powerful influence. I was able to see a lot and really started to get a taste of there's a difference between healing and treatment and symptoms and therapy, and what are we all really, really, really doing, and it really resonates very, very deeply to be in healing. I want to help heal. And then got out and worked at Mountainside, the rehab up in Canaan, Connecticut, which was a phenomenal experience. Again, cutting my teeth as a counselor, first job out of grad school. I learned an enormous amount. They were just switching from paper charting to electronic charting, which is an enormous change. They were switching from sort of a 12-step, sort of a farm, sort of very low-key atmosphere to a very beautiful, almost Betty Ford quality, high quality, amazing establishment, just absolutely beautiful. So there was a lot going on internally within the system. So it was a lot for me to process and digest, but I grew from all of it. Then I was recruited back. That was an hour commute for my family, and I think maybe the powers that be had something to do with getting me back into Danbury, back to Catholic Charities. I was recruited back there and then worked there and gained my clinical hours and became licensed and clinical at that juncture, and then started to work for myself. I opened up my private practice at that point when I gained my C, my clinical, and then worked at CCBH, the Danbury Clinic, the psychiatric clinic, which was phenomenal training, phenomenal. Loved that population. And then I was briefly at a school, which really helped me to understand how much I've always loved working with kids and families, very important to me, especially from divorce.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about your advocacy at the school.
Oh, I fell in love with becoming, I seem to be able to, I think when we're called to doing what we're doing, I think the bond comes naturally. I can easily build rapport with kids, adults, young people. I work with a lot of 20s, people in their young, late teens, early 20s. I work with a lot of people in that range, and some under. And just loved working with the parents of some of these children that were really marginalized and having a very, very, very difficult time and really needed somebody in that room at a PPT.
Now, what's a PPT?
Parent placement. It's a team meeting where everybody comes and sits around the table at a conference table to really meet and confer and decide, what can we plan? What can we do for this child?
Right. And you're talking about developmental or more emotional?
Everything.
Everything.
It's really, I always see everything through the holistic lens. A child is a whole person, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. So I always try to see what can we do to build on their strengths to increase this child's success. What can we do to build their success or chances for success? And just fell in love with it and do a lot of that work.
Right.
Right.
And are you seeing, and this is kind of a little off topic, but more out of curiosity, are you seeing more of a push or a movement for meditation in school to try to help these children cope with anxiety? And I've read a lot about schools that are replacing meditation with detention and other types of punishment for the children.
Absolutely. It's long overdue. We need to have meditation versus suspension or detention, or not even so much meditation because a child might not want that, but just to have a safe room, a sanctuary. We need to create sanctuaries in schools where kids can just come and there's no punishment. Punishment is long. That's an old paradigm. It doesn't work. It never has.
Right.
That's my own personal belief. I get very excited when I think of, I brought a mindfulness program to the school, the Access School that I was working at, and we practiced sitting quietly we started, I think, at 1 minute, and then we built it to 3 to 4 minutes, and the entire staff and students would sit around a table and meditate together.
And what,
every day.
elementary, middle, or high school, or all three?
Access School in Danbury is actually for all ages.
Okay.
It's a very small school for children who need to have the educational component. They may be coming from a juvenile center, or a lot of the kids are coming from group homes. DCF has been involved, and they struggle with learning. They struggle with the learning component, either because they have something psychological happening that's an obstacle for them to learn at their finest, or there's a psychiatric issue, or there's just emotional wounding or trauma. We're seeing so many traumatized children that have really struggles with learning because the brain is so deeply impacted by what they've experienced.
Right.
So the mindfulness is essential to calm their nervous system and find that baseline of some lowered triggering, some lower sense of getting them out of fight or flight and helping them to find some safe ground.
Right.
It's all about creating safety.
That's great. I am the mother of 2 teenage boys, and now that they are getting to the point, more so physically, where they don't need me as much, I'm going to, and I'm glad you mentioned that, I'm going to try to spearhead some type of mindfulness program in their school district, because that's how strongly I feel about
Yes.
it.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yes. 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 And I've got people if you want to talk to
great.
about that. 'Cause,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's springing forth in a lot of ways, and I think that's what's really coming.
Yes, absolutely.
It has to.
Absolutely.
It has to. We have to give these kids a chance. Public school is phenomenal. I have nothing, I mean, our family has always had a very, very positive experience with especially Brookfield Public Schools. I can't speak enough for how phenomenal they are. There needs to be safety measures and ways for people, we can't cookie cut education, we can't cookie cut treatment, we can't cookie cut really anything. We're all individuals having the human experience the way we all individually experience our humanity.
Right, absolutely.
And so we need to meet people where they are, and a great way to do that is in sanctuary. So by coloring, spend 20 minutes coloring and see how different your mood becomes.
That's a huge thing right now.
Right. Or singing
Right.
and dancing and playing, or having, yoga, or there's lots of ways.
Right.
Lots
And
of
for
ways
those
to meet
children
people.
who don't use or aren't interested in using sports as an outlet.
Correct.
My older son is big into sports, so
Right.
that's kind of his outlet.
Right.
My younger son really not so much, so he's trying to figure out all of
What
that,
works
what
for
his
him.
outlet is. So for those children
Right.
who are interested in coloring and meditating,
Right.
that's a great outlet for them.
Right. Or even moving their bodies in a way that feels good.
Right.
Dancing like crazy, and hip hop can be another outlet that a lot of kids relate to.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
hang a disco ball in the gym and let them dance. Why not? We
So
cut down on absenteeism.
Yes. So talking about movement of the body, let's jump into yoga. At what point
Great.
did you start incorporating that into your practice?
When did I from the very beginning.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Let's talk
Breath
about-
work, yoga,
Okay.
meditation, prayer, practice of gratitude. It's essential because all of what I just talked about impacts our breath, which impacts our brain, which impacts our nervous system. So it's all beneficial. It's whatever works for someone. Some folks don't want to hear a thing about prayer, and I honor that wherever you are. Some people just want to get on the floor with me and do sun salutations, and then they get up and they go, oh my God, I haven't moved my body like that. I didn't know I could do that. And they feel wonderful because
Right.
they discovered their own strength,
Right.
that they could, in fact, do what they thought they couldn't.
Right. And there's something, I recently started taking hot yoga, which I absolutely love. I can't really, when people ask me, I can't really explain it, like the feeling. There's just something so spiritual about it. That once you
agree.
start doing it, once you find a great teacher,
Right.
it's really just, there's nothing else like it.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it lands softly inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
especially the breath work.
Yes, I was going to talk about that very
Yes.
briefly because
No,
I don't
go
want to
ahead.
interrupt. That's okay. I just wanted to briefly say, because I talk about this a lot in the Salt Cave when I'm up there with my
Which we'll talk about in a little bit too.
great.
Yes.
But we can change our thoughts in a fifth of a second. We can change our mood in the fifth of a second. We can, if we take one full deep breath, that sends peptides up to the brain, and the brain starts to relax, whether we want to or not, whether we believe we can or not. We can change our experience in our own body very, very quickly. So the body physiology changes, and that's just yoga and breath work, and pranayama, as we call breath work, it's a science, it's a technology. It's not woo-woo.
Right.
It's thousands of years old. It's not going anywhere. It's been working for this long, and it's, I happen to study Kundalini Yoga, which is, KRI is the Kundalini Research Institute.
Okay.
And I know folks who are in MRIs, long-term meditators who are in MRI machines, looking at their brains versus somebody who's never meditated.
Right.
And I like evidence, so there's plenty of amazing, incredibly encouraging evidence for
Yes.
people to at least be open-minded and try it so that they have their own experience of what their own body can do for them.
And what's great with yoga too is that you can go at your own pace, and it's openly accepted. Even if you've been practicing for
Yes.
years, if that for that day you're having a bad day, you're sore
Right.
for whatever, you don't have to exert yourself. You can really just go at your own pace, which is great. So what's the difference between Kundalini yoga and hot yoga, for example, or traditional yoga?
Kundalini yoga is a Raj yoga, meaning royal.
Okay.
So it's a yoga for householders, meaning in India. It was kept secret for a long time because it's so powerful. My yoga teacher, Mahan Rishi, and his wife, Nirbhai Kaur, studied with Yogi Bhajan, who came here from India in 1969, because he had what we call a siddhi, which is a power, S-I-D-D-I. And he had more than one, but he was able to foresee the future. So he knew what we're living in now. So he brought the yoga instead of, because it was back in the 60s with the drug culture in San Francisco, he landed and taught classes because he knew drugs are outside the body. Yoga and breath work is inside our body. It's powerful medicine to help us heal from within for our nervous systems to be able to. So he knew what we were looking at. And so the technology is already laid out for us. And it's really, Kundalini yoga, I can't speak for a whole lot of other yogas. I practice Ashtanga as well as Kundalini. And hot yoga I'm a big fan of because I can be in a room and do, that's more of a Hatha style. So there's many, 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 many different styles.
Yes.
Right? So Kundalini has meditation, chanting, what we call kriyas, which is a set of exercises, which it's a specific set, like we could be doing a heart set. So it's good for the cardiovascular system, or we can be doing something there's a lot for drug brain. I did an entire weekend training on stopping habitual behaviors for addiction.
Right.
I've studied a lot of addictive meditations specifically, or breath work, or kriyas specific sets to help. And we're all struggling with addiction, whether it's our telephones or
food
or
alcohol,
food, sex,
absolutely.
shopping, you name
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
And we're living in a world where we can get anything we want at our fingertips.
Right.
So it's a very, very physical practice. It's a rigorous practice. It's a challenging practice, but it's a very rapidly healing practice. Folks are able to burn karma quickly and raise their consciousness level. It's the yoga of awareness, so we become aware and awake.
The Kundalini yoga.
Because
yoga, yes.
Kundalini means the hair of the lock of our beloved. So coiled at the end of our spine, in our sacrum, is creative energy. And so when we practice, that creative energy rises up through our spine, taking us to our purpose, our
Now,
destiny.
Right. Is there any, and I've read this, I don't know how true it is or not, is there any danger in activating Kundalini?
Great question.
More so than, I know from what I've read,
Yeah.
you're the expert, but sometimes it happens naturally, near-death experience, something like that, right? Or you can kind of force it to, no?
I'm not an expert. I'm just a yogi. I'm a yogi. I'm laughing in ways, and not laughing. Yogi Bhajan again he brought this to this country because of the drug culture. We see folks who are maybe using drugs and will practice Kundalini yoga and may have a rapid Kundalini experience. I can't speak to a whole lot of that, but drugs and yoga usually don't mix because yoga is very powerful. And if I put chemicals in my body, but then I'm also in my bodies, we have 10 bodies according to Kundalini yoga and other yogas.
Okay.
If I'm messing with my bodies or my chakra system, my energy system, which really in its natural state is joy and well-being and health and wholeness,
Right.
there's a big conflict there.
Right. And when you talk about drugs, are you talking about prescription drugs or
Could be.
like marijuana,
Could
that kind
be.
of stuff? Could be one of the other.
Marijuana today is extremely strong. They say 40 times stronger than when I was and high school.
Right.
So it's nothing to mess with. Hospital ERs are reporting a lot of cannabis-induced psychosis. So you don't want to have a young person who is taking in daily marijuana and practicing.
Right.
We don't know.
Right.
It's not anything I have a lot of experience with. So I don't want to go into, I don't want to tread waters that I don't really
absolutely.
know about. But that's, I'm only sharing what I do know.
Right. And are you finding more of a movement from prescription drugs per se to more holistic treatment methods like yoga, Reiki, that kind of stuff?
I see it all the time because of how I practice, and my colleagues and I are a lot of mind, body, spirit based, soul based practitioners. Let's face it, we're on a soul journey. If we're not treating the whole body, then we're really missing something. I'm a proponent for medication. I never get in the way. That's not my job or purpose or place.
Right.
I honor the doctors I work with for my patients and clients, and want only what's best for them. So I never judge. Everybody has their own journey. I do see a lot of complementary adjunct treatment and self-care, meaning get to yoga, get outside, get your feet on the ground and go into nature, the greatest teacher we have. Go hike a mountain, tell me how you feel before and after, and measure your stress scale, right? If you need the Valium, I get it. I think that though, when folks meditate before they go to bed, we go to bed in a meditative state that changes our brain waves. That's powerful.
Right.
If we go to bed in a meditative state, our brain stays in that state.
That's
We're going to
interesting.
sleep better. We're going to feel better the next day. So
Yeah.
it's pretty powerful.
So do you teach classes?
I do.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, happy to. I'm looking for new space. Anybody wants to.
And you're on Mill Plain, right?
That's my private practice space.
Okay.
100 Mill Plain.
Okay. All right.
But I teach out of my home right now. I have a small cluster of students.
Okay.
I taught out of my home before, and they all became teachers. And then I
You were
in
that good.
I was in a studio, and it just didn't work out. So I brought the class back to my home. I have a yoga class Tuesdays at 5:30 in my home, and then I teach meditation, a silent heart meditation on Wednesday morning at 9.
Okay. All right. And at this point, why don't you tell the viewers what your contact information is in case they want to reach out to you? And if you want to,
Great.
I don't know if you want to give out your home address for the class, but if
No.
your phone number
Invitation
at your
only.
office, and if the viewers are interested in your class, you can go that route to contact us.
Terrific. Okay, so I would suggest folks check out my website,
Okay.
lisa-shea, SHEA.com.
Okay.
And I've got, I think, 5 pages that people can read about what I do and kind of get to know me a little bit. I'm also up in the Salt Cave, and so my
Yes.
contact information is also on my website.
Okay.
So I'm not going to, say it now. That feels weird.
All right, so let's talk about the guided meditation at the Salt Cave.
Great.
You know I'm a big fan of that.
Yes, I do. And my next Salt Cave event is January 29th. It's I'm up there Monday evenings, once a month.
Okay.
Right now. At 6 p.m. I'm really blessed to have met Marty and Sue Martovich, who own Salt of the Earth in Woodbury, right
Okay.
on Main Street. And they have a gorgeous spa, gift shop. It's just beautiful. They offer many, many, many different services. And one of the beauties is that they have this cave literally made of salt. So it's halotherapy, which is salt therapy. So it's projecting negative ions. So that alone is very, very powerful. They say being in a salt cave for 1 hour is like being at the beach for 2 weeks. And back with the TB, back in the day, people would sit, or any respiratory or skin
Asthma.
or inflammation or
Right.
arthritis or breathing things. They would always have people sit at the beach. So this is like a concentrated, phenomenal experience, and you're in a zero gravity chair. So it's really kind of natural that we would sort of add to that, right? So I go in, and I've got amazing people who want to do this every month and give me great feedback. So the universe is saying, yes, keep doing this. And so I will guide folks into their hearts for about 20 minutes, or we'll do a little breath work before to kind of calm and soothe the body and ground the body. Grounding is so important. And then go into our hearts for some healing, and then I play the gong for about 20 minutes as well. And so there's sound healing, which is very, very powerful.
Which is resonating to the body.
Well, the sound, they say, is the sound of the gong, when played correctly, is the only sound that cuts through the mind chatter.
Okay.
And when we can cut through, because the mind is very powerful, right? We need the mind, but we also learn to control the mind.
Right.
When we control the mind, we control the breath. When we control the breath, we control the mind. So we slow ourselves down, and that can stop.
Right.
And then there's peace.
And we have to learn to control our thoughts.
And it's very helpful when the gong does it for us.
Yes.
And then folks have a very, very
Oh, that's interesting.
passive, it's a passive, incredibly, I'm a deep believer in very, very deep relaxation. We typically don't do that in our culture.
No.
We think being on our phones, texting our friends, or watching TV, or some of these things are relaxing when really they're stimulating.
Right, right.
So to be in a cave for an hour is very powerful.
Very relaxing, yes. We have 1 minute left.
Fabulous.
Last question. What are your favorite areas of research as you continue on this journey?
Oh, that's hard to nail down. I'm a big proponent of reducing the effects of trauma, helping folks with the impact of divorce, more and more yogic information. I'm constantly learning about yoga. What else? Oh, goodness. I feel like I'm going to run out of time.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, mostly about how to serve, just keep learning about how to serve the folks that we're seeing, and how to best offer them what they need.
Right.
And
And to
whatever,
help-
however that looks.
Right, and help guide them in making or trying to figure out what is going to benefit them, what's going to work for them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
What
why don't you
clicks.
give your website one more time?
Oh, thank you. Okay, so it's lisa-shea.com.
Okay. Thank you for joining us on 30 Minutes for this episode with Lisa Shea, and I look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.